Man, SMU, baby, doing their thing. We will discuss them for sure here in the Tuesday tailgate. I did see somebody on the YouTube said, Tatum Bell's my neighbor. Ask him if he remembers that hit from OU from Roy Williams at Oklahoma. I'd love to know. I need to send you the picture of that hit, Carter, because I think you'd be a fan of it.
Please do.
It is Carter Freemon joining us right now as Kevin is still out, so we can't have fun, but we'll try. We'll try to have a little bit of fun as we talk a little college football. We got some options here. Oklahoma has a new coordinator, the conference title matchup, and who is a lock for the college football playoff. What do you want to dive into first, Carter?
I mean, we can just really quickly hit OU hiring Ben Arbuckle from Washington State. Washington State, they...
From the wilderness?
From the wilderness, from the Palouse.
And where is Arbuckle Wilderness?
North.
In Oklahoma?
In Oklahoma. So it's time to buckle up, is what I've seen OU people on Twitter saying. But
I've been there before.
Look, OU had an absolutely dreadful offense this year under Seth Littrell. He got fired midway through the season. He ran a dated offense at UNT when he was head coach there, got fired for it. Ran a dated offense at OU, got fired for it. So Arbuckle ran a really fun system at Washington State. And Washington State's a team that, easily could have totally fallen off after losing their conference mates, being in a two-team conference, having to scramble to put together a season. But Arbuckle did a really good job there, so hopefully...
I was there when he won the Apple Bowl in Seattle.
Apple Cup. You were
Apple
halfway
Cup.
there.
Are you proud of him or disappointed?
I'll give him that. I'll give him, he got the most important name,
I was
the
there,
part
they
of
were
the
cheering
name.
during batting practice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's right across the
Right,
street
yeah.
from the Mariners-Ranger game.
They played at Lumen Field this year in Seattle. So I think it's a good hire, but again, OU and Brent Venables have given me, as a fan, no faith that they're going to figure it out over two of his first 3 years here.
Venables might just be a good defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And sometimes we find that out too late.
Yeah, and Lincoln Riley might just be a good offensive coordinator.
Enough OU talk.
Enough.
I'm really excited
don't look at
about
my jacket.
I'm excited about Saturday. I'm excited about when they pick these 12 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to talking about these Saturday games, the one you're most interested in and why.
So I think between the SEC and the Big Ten championship games, which is Georgia and Texas, and then Penn State and Oregon, I think those four teams are in no matter what. Then it just gets into the seeding. With the Big 12 championship game here in Arlington, one of those teams is in because they'll be the 5th-ranked conference champion or the 4th-ranked if they jump Boise State, but one of Arizona State and Iowa State will be in. The one that's interesting to me, just from the committee's perspective, the people choosing it, is the ACC championship game. So that is
Clemson and SMU?
Clemson and SMU. Now, did you know SMU is the only Power 4 team to go undefeated in conference play this year?
Yes.
Which I think is awesome.
Yes.
I think that's really impressive. No other team did that. Only SMU. Their only loss was to BYU, which out of conference. So
how would you grade the ACC conference compared to SEC, maybe?
I think it's definitely the third
tier. Okay.
Third tier, but regardless of the tier of it, it's not easy to go undefeated in any conference. So
the focus that it takes to do it each week, yes.
And especially after faltering early, for them to bounce back and go undefeated the rest of the way is awesome. I think that should be rewarded.
If they win, they're the 3 seed?
Most likely, because they'll have a win over a ranked Clemson team in addition to what they've done the rest of the year. And right now, if I'm looking at the AP poll, they're number 8. And I don't think there's any way, if Boise State and Arizona State, the two next ranked teams in the other conferences, I don't think there's any way they jump them. So they will for sure get a bye if they win. And I think they'll win. I think they're better than Clemson. I think Clemson's fraudulent. I have thought they're fraudulent since they lost to Georgia by 30 points in the opening game of the year. But
okay,
did Oregon go undefeated in conference?
You're right. They did.
The Fantex
They went
yelling.
completely defeated. They're undefeated.
Yeah, they went undefeated
Sorry,
the whole
Fantex.
season. So they're the only team that didn't go undefeated the whole
wanted
year
SMU to be it.
that went undefeated in conference. So other than Oregon.
There we go.
Yeah.
So Oregon's just been on such they just keep winning, and I just put them outside of. There's no debate with Oregon. I guess the reason I thought that was going with SMU, that's a good point for them to have, say, if they lose to Clemson in the title game.
Yeah, we're one of the only teams that have done that.
And I'll say, I didn't know this during commercial break because I was asking Notre Dame. I was wondering why they kept putting them as a 5 seed when I'm like, they're probably going to be 2 or 3 or 4, but they can't be.
They can't be. So Notre Dame's not in a conference, and they like it that way. And because of that, with the deal that all the school, because whenever the 12-team playoff got agreed to, it was the power conferences and Notre Dame were the ones that were agreeing to this. So all the commissioners plus Notre Dame's president. That's how much sway they have, but they're fine with it because they'll be the 5 or the 6. They'll host a home playoff game, probably lose to an SEC team because that's what they do in the playoff, but they're totally happy with that. So yeah, they can't be the 1 through 4. They will not get a bye, but they will, barring some unforeseen chaos, they will host a game at Notre Dame Stadium.
All right, I went out on a date with my wife the last time UT and Georgia played each other, and the game was on television, and it was just a schmearing. It wasn't a competitive game. What makes you believe or think that Texas is going to be more competitive and win that game and stick into that? What I'm thinking most likely is 2 seed.
Yes, I do. Yeah, because I think Oregon's going to beat Penn State, and I think they'll be the 1 seed. So with their undefeated conference record, my bad. Texas would give me much more confidence just based on both of those 2 teams' last 2 games, right? Like Texas goes into A&M, which is obviously we saw one of the best environments of the season and just is dominant from start to finish. Doesn't allow a point on offense for A&M.
I really thought they learned something from the Georgia game, and that was the environment's going to be crazy. And I know that was a home environment for them against Georgia, but I just didn't think they were ready for it. But I also think that the play calling early in the game was much better than it was against Georgia because he didn't panic and just like, oh my gosh, we got to throw all the time. He was like, you know what, we can run the ball against these guys. And I thought that was more effective for them.
And two, the thing in that Georgia game, for Texas's first game against Georgia was Georgia didn't play great in that first half. I mean, Carson Beck and the team had like 3 turnovers, and Texas just every time they did something good on the defensive side of the ball, their offense did something bad. So, but just watching Texas in this last game just impose their will upon A&M, and then watching Georgia take 8 overtimes, the second most ever overtime periods needed in a college football game to beat Georgia Tech when they were down 17-0 at the half. Like, Georgia's had more questionable moments across their season, across their schedule, than Texas has.
Okay. Now I want to ask about kind of your 11 and 12 seed. Take out the conference champs, because I get that maybe Arizona State might end up being an 11 or 12 seed if they
so whoever the 5th ranked conference champion is, whether that's the Mountain West champion, Boise State, or UNLV, those are the only 2 ranked. Those are most likely going to be the 5th ranked team, or Arizona State or Iowa State.
Oh, they have to go all the way to 5.
They take 5, but whoever the 5th one is going to be probably the 12 seed.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Who do you have today as kind of the last 2 in? And do you think they will be the last 2 in after the conference championship games are done?
I think that's why I'm so interested in the ACC championship game, because I think it hinges on what happens there. So if SMU wins, I think it'll be SMU's in no matter what. And then it's down to one of the 3 3-loss SEC teams, which is Alabama, it's Ole Miss, and it's South Carolina. If SMU loses and Clemson steals that conference champion spot as a 9-3, 10-3 team at that point, SMU would join those other teams. And like I said earlier, SMU's been great the entire year. Just based on merit alone, I think they should be one of the best 12 teams in the country in the college football playoff.
They're exciting.
But if they lose in conference championship weekend, is the committee going to get cold feet? And are they going to say, well, Alabama and Ole Miss and South Carolina have had a tougher schedule, they have better wins? That's where I think it starts to get ticky-tack. And we'll throw in 10-2 Miami, who should be playing in the ACC championship game, but they crapped the bed against Syracuse last weekend to honestly probably fall completely out of even college football playoff contention.
Would you get rid of the championship games?
I wouldn't, because I'm a fan of the history of the game, and I've loved that that's something that you still should want to play for.
Okay.
Do they maybe need to make the conference champions not automatically the 1 through 4 seed? Sure. Because then you could change it to where, like, if you think the 4 best teams are in the SEC and the Big Ten, you could give them the 4 byes, and then the ACC champ or the Big 12 champ, or in any given year, like whoever you think the 4 best teams are, they should maybe get the bye. But I still think the conference championships are really, really important. It's something teams have played for and have a ton of pride in since the beginning of the game. So I don't want to get rid of them. I just think there's a better way to implement them with this 12-team playoff.
I did a bracket on my own. This is how excited I am about it, this new 12-team situation.
Look at you, Mike. Excitement.
when I was doing it, I almost got to putting Indiana versus like Ohio State or Penn State in the first round together. I don't know. I'm not following college football like you are. Have they talked about, hey, let's try to avoid like they do in college basketball. Let's try to avoid SEC versus SEC in the first round.
They said that does not matter for their seeding. That's something that the committee's come out and said, yeah, if we think Tennessee's the 7th best team and Georgia's the 10th best team, they're going to play each other in the first round. That should not matter. Now, they say that when it comes to the actual scheduling of that, I wonder if they're going to stick to that. Just me personally.
Yeah, because I had like at 8 and 9, I kind of had around there like Penn State and Georgia. I'm assuming they both lose on Saturday.
I'm kind of with you.
And I was like, boy, that would be a fun 8-9 game. But then I started looking like right around there is Ohio State, Indiana, Big Ten. Then I'm like, I'm trying not to put Penn State versus one of those two teams. And then with Georgia, I'm trying not to put them versus Tennessee or kind of Alabama. Or, I don't know. I feel like that will be challenging when you're like, well, we saw that game 5 weeks ago. Do we just put that back into the first round, or do we try to have almost like the first round being Big 10 versus SEC in some matchups to try to eliminate some of these teams?
They have said that that's not going to matter, but that again, I think they could make it to where it is different conferences versus each other. And the other thing that the committee has said that shouldn't impact their view on certain teams is if they win or lose their conference championship game.
Okay.
I don't know if I believe that either, though.
The other thing I was wondering about is like in one of my matchups, just farting around here, I had Boise State versus Indiana. That is not a good game. Like that, I'm not saying it's not a good game, but it doesn't sound like a good game when you're saying round 1 and you have Tennessee versus Alabama and Penn State versus Georgia, and I have Ohio State versus Arizona State. And then I throw in Boise State versus Indiana. I'm just wondering, those two teams, if they get in and they're playing in the first round, that sounds like two non-followed teams around the country.
Not to the level of obviously every other team in there, but this is what we're going to have to get used to when it comes to a 12-team playoff is you're adding imperfect teams. Like your level of what you expect of a national champion has to change. And if you win 4 or 5 games over the next month or so, you're a deserved national champion, but you're going to allow for 3 lost teams to potentially be a part of this. Like the margin for error is so much bigger. And no offense to Indiana, no offense to Boise State. You're right. They don't have that pedigree. They don't have that. People expect them. People want to go out and watch them.
Or will TV ratings suffer because I put 2 teams that aren't really followed in the same game?
And I hate that TV has so much to do with it because, I think that would be the lowest rated game out of any of those other matchups. But look, in the first year, that shouldn't matter because it is a new format. I think people will watch. But, that could be something that they take into account because – look, and if Boise State's the 12 team or the 12th seed and Notre Dame's the 5 seed, they're fine. So maybe they do switch it up a little bit to make sure that Indiana's playing at Tennessee or Boise State's playing at Ohio State or Texas. And just on the front of Texas, I think if they lose the SEC championship game, they're going to be no lower than 6th because their main competition is Notre Dame and Ohio State at that point, I think. And with Ohio State and Texas, you look at, they both played Michigan, who beat them, Texas, who lost to them in a very, very embarrassing game on last Saturday, Ohio State. So I think Texas is 6th or higher.
Can you imagine? I know the semifinal game is here in Arlington. Can you imagine? I know that it probably won't happen. It would have to, if it was Texas versus SMU in Arlington.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, you just have to get them all on the right side of the bracket, but that would be an old Southwest Conference matchup right there.
Carter, thank you very much for your efforts today.
Thank you, guys.
Dilligraph 1947. I have to admit, Carter knows his shiz about college football.
Especially
I do like
conference
listening.
records of Oregon.
Yep.
Nice work, man. Nice work. And Kyle Yeomans.
That's my strong suit right there.
Are you going to go home and really berate yourself like Kevin does when he makes one little mistake that really doesn't matter?
I might just ask Kevin to call me and just chew me out because that's what he does to you guys.
Yeah.
And I think, I think I deserve it.